through these next couple weeks when we're all feeling a little bit isolated and socially a little bit further away from each other, physically further away, maybe less socially further away, maybe just kind of shorten the distance between us and the people around us, provide some good content, some company to people who are just kind of feeling the loneliness, feeling the stretch.
Yeah.
So this is
Where'd your
actually,
notebook go?
I don't know. I took notes.
I did. Where'd you put it? We do have a plan, actually.
Yeah, here it is.
Sort of. So, turns out this whole blogging thing is harder than people make it look.
That's okay, I got it.
We got it.
Oh, yeah. So, plan for next couple of nights, and we don't know how many. The book has, my book, I don't remember how many chapters.
Promo.
Yep.
Shameless
this is the book.
promo. Backwards.
Absolutely shameless promo. That's mirrored.
It's mirrored.
You
You left the blueprints in the notebook.
I did. You left it in the. I did.
In the, yeah.
And the president has the football. It has 9 chapters plus an introduction.
Yes.
So we're just kind of going to go through this kind of a chapter at a time over the next couple of nights, barring anything unforeseen. Obviously, plans can change, things can come up that we don't expect, especially with 4 kids. But we want to encourage all the conversation that's going on here. So if there's questions, if there's something you want to say, we really want to encourage that. Just kind of make it feel like we're sitting around the table together after a long evening.
Yep, go put it back.
And
Thanks.
or after a long day, and some chill out time with some grown-ups, talking about grown-up stuff.
Yep. But we also want to make sure this is a stress-free space that's kind of insulated from all the crazy outside stuff that's going on right now. So
Yes, we promise.
go back to bed, Peter.
We promise as much as possible. As much as possible, we will not mention the thing.
The thing. Yeah, we just don't want. Yeah, this is not the spot for that.
There's too much of that already going on. So, and that's not why we're here. It's not. That's not why we thought we'd get down and sit down and chat.
Nope.
So, like Emily said, panic free.
Yeah. Well, and we just were thinking that we've kind of over this space of about 48 hours, we've gone from having a commitment almost every single night of the week to nothing. So now it's like, well, we have all this time in the evening free. What can we do with that? So we thought something that we could do would be to do something positive. I don't know. Yeah,
and that's really it. It's just to provide some positive input, some good words, and some conversation about life stuff, kind of that really important stuff that's going to get easy to be distracted from.
Yeah.
I don't remember who said it. I've seen it a couple different times. This is not the Great Lent we wanted, but it's the Great Lent we got.
Yes.
And so I think that's a reasonable place to start. This is still the Great Lent that we're in, and it's the time that we have. Hey, Josh.
Hey, Josh.
There's somebody who's home with new kiddos.
Yeah.
Hey, Nina.
Hey, Nina. So a couple years back, for those of you who don't know, Caleb wrote this book.
I did.
And that was 5 years ago. He wrote that book. So a lot's happened in the last 5 years, and just to kind of, we wanted to bring guys up to speed with what's been going on with us, and then what I don't know why we're talking about this stuff now, and the intro to the book itself. So
so we kind of wanted to, for those of you who may not know some of our story and kind of where we came from here. So we became Orthodox 8 years ago, this past January.
Yeah. 2000. No.
Yeah, 2012.
12. Yes, 2012.
8 years ago. Doesn't feel like that.
Math.
And shortly before Simeon was born, our youngest, I got this bug in my head to write a book, and I wanted a book that would be the book that I wish someone had been able to give me. when we were first looking at Orthodoxy and looking at raising a family, we actually asked a lot of people that question: what do you do with your kids? And so this was kind of the resource we wish we'd had, which was the idea anyway, and it certainly has kind of touched that nerve. I think people have found what they were looking for on a very basic level, which is kind of cool. It's when you accomplish the thing you set out to do, that's kind of cool. So we, 4 kids, and 8 years later, just kind of the life that we've been living through here. So you want to tell a little bit of kind of how we came into kind of a little bit of our story, and then kind of dive into a little bit. I'll talk a little bit more about the book.
Yeah, so we were actually introduced to the Orthodox Church through some friends in college, and we watched their journey into the church, and were really intrigued by that, but weren't really influenced too much, didn't think about it too much for ourselves at that point. And it was later on when we were married and kind of facing transitions that it was like, okay, we need to rethink our own spiritual journey and what we... Oh, yeah.
Move closer to me, because there's like a huge gap.
What we take seriously about our faith and how that translates into our daily life and everything. And we knew that we needed to take a serious look at the Orthodox Church. This was when Anna, our oldest, was about a year. We were already pregnant with number 2, and it was like there was a lot of stuff changing kind of all at once. So we thought we'd switch churches in the middle of that.
We're already switching.
We're always changing, moving across the country, changing jobs. We, just throw that in there too.
Yeah. It was...
and I think as we go through the book, we'll share more parts of detail about some of the things that we went through in our story. But Caleb has a degree in biblical languages and in youth ministry, and so he's always had kind of more of a theological bent in looking at things. He's very academic and reading lots of things all the time. And so it was really cool for me, 5 years ago, to watch him write this book and just kind of see it flowing out. And his work with Elisa, that partnership that they had was really special. A lot of it was online. So it's kind of apropos that we're doing this online.
It is. So Elisa's not currently on the list of people watching, but that's kind of a funny bit of the story. So I had the idea for the book, and I was like, I don't have any way to get it published. Who do I know who's kind of already in this space, kind of the parenting realm, and
which is a question you get a lot now that you've
written the book. It is now. How do you do this? How does somebody take a chance on you? And so I reached out to Elisa, and I think 6 or 8 hours later, after lots of back and forth texting, we realized that we were going to write a book together, and we put together a proposal, and we just started writing, and we did it all in Google Docs. We actually we have only been in the same space geographically once in the last 5 years.
It was epic.
And it was pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, the Ancient Faith Conference. What was that? That was 2-3 years ago now? In June? Yeah? So, which is a really awesome conference. If anybody's wondering, next time they do that conference,
yeah, the Content Creators Conference is really worth going to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was the first time we were all together. So we did a lot of this on the phone. We did a lot of it over text message. We did a lot of it just live.
Yeah, because she's in Texas.
Yep.
And at the time, she has 5 girls, and I think at the time her oldest was just starting college.
Or just about to.
Just about to. And she had, I think her youngest was junior high, and then, we kind of picked up from there and went all the way to a baby.
Yeah, so we had a newborn. So we had a newborn, and she had finishing high school. So between the two of us, we had 9 children, and we were between birth and college. I thought that was a lot of space to grow from.
There's a lot of experience there. But we've learned a lot since then about our own kids.
That's true.
Our oldest is 11 now, for those of you who want to feel old. She turned 11 last week. So, and then Simeon, our youngest, is now 5. So we've moved into the big kid years.
Yeah, we have no more babies.
No more babies, no more diapers.
I keep referring to Simeon as the 3-year-old.
Yeah, definitely not a baby anymore.
So that's kind of a little bit about us,
Yeah.
and kind of where the book came from. And as Emily was saying earlier, we really do want to capitalize on the fact that we have these free evenings. Like I said, we had a calendar full every night this week, and that's just not the way things are now. So how do we capitalize on this and provide something really positive and add some value to the end of the day, I feel. Yeah. So something that's kind of fun is this was just released on Audible, which is really cool. No more diapers.
Sorry,
it's coming. It's coming, Elijah. It's going to happen.
What's happening?
No more diapers.
Oh, no more diapers. Yes, don't worry, you'll get there.
But so this was just released on Audible a month ago or so. I'm really bad at keeping track of these things. I just am. And we are going to be giving away some free copies of the audiobook through these next couple of days. So our thought was this, and so you can take note of this if you want to. So chapter 4 of this book, whether or not it's actually day 4 or sometime later, but chapter 4 is on creating sacred space. So we thought it'd be fun if people would take pictures of their prayer corners.
Their sacred space.
Their sacred space.
Yeah.
Whether that's a monstrosity like ours is, or
a
something a little smaller.
Yeah.
And so what we'll do is we'll just do a random drawing. It's not best prayer corner. It's just who,
Yeah, so anybody, if you want to just do a direct message to Caleb on whatever platform you choose, I guess. Doesn't really matter. And we'll make a list of all the people who made an entry, and we'll draw from there, and then we'll make kind of a slideshow of all our different sacred spaces to put that together at the end.
Something to share with
tech that we don't even have yet. So we'll figure that out as we go.
We'll figure it out. We ordered a new computer. Our computer finally died.
Yeah.
Which is why, like I said, we're doing this on 2 different phones, because we're trying to do Facebook over here and load this up to my YouTube channel over here. So that's just the way things are working right now.
But to those of you who are watching, if you have questions about orthodoxy, about little church, about raising kids in the church, anything along those lines, writing a book, anything like that, if you want to shoot those to us on Facebook Live, I'll take notes of those questions, and we'll make sure to answer those before we finish up tonight. So not that we're the experts. If we feel like we can't answer the question, we'll send you to an expert. Yeah, in fact, the book starts out on the very first page.
Yes.
I feel like we need to do this before we get too much further in here.
I'm just going to read this.
Especially as our priest is watching.
I'm just going to read this. It says, ask your priest.
Yes.
As you make your way through this book, you may have questions. Please ask your priest. As you attempt to implement the concepts you find here, you may run into trouble. Whenever you're in doubt, please ask your priest. No book can take the place of active pastoral care of a priest. No book knows you, prays for you, or sees you. Your priest does. The church loves you. You've been assigned your own shepherd, a spiritual father tasked with guiding you, keeping you on the narrow path. And what a wonderful gift. So go talk with him. Ask your priest. Which may be something we say a lot.
Yes.
And even though the thing is distancing us from people, that doesn't mean that relationship stops.
No.
Whoever it is who's pastoring you, they haven't stopped praying for you, and they haven't stopped loving you, and they're there for you if you need them, if you have questions or are confused in your spiritual counsel. Just because you can't maybe get to church doesn't mean you can't still develop and grow that relationship there.
Yes.
So that's the only time I will mention the thing, because this is a thing-free
zone.
Not thing today.
Okay. What else did we want to try? Make sure we covered. I think that's all we wanted to cover before we got into the intro.
So we wanted to start, see how far we kind of got tonight in looking at the first part of the book here. I'm not gonna obviously read it out loud to you, but I think there's some interesting questions that are brought up right off at the beginning, and then later, and then in the next chapter, about when we talk about the little church and the family as a little church, what that means. And I think especially nowadays where people come and go in their families, there's lots of busyness, schedules are pulling us in lots of different places. It's easy to be confused about what our role is as parents and what our house should look like.
Mm-hmm.
And so we took this quotation from St. John Chrysostom about the home being the little church.
Mm-hmm.
And we really wanted to build on that idea. So in the book, it's really built on kind of this basic framework of prayer, fasting, almsgiving, the three great virtues that even Christ talks about in the Sermon on the Mount. But along with that, what that looks like in the real world. And that's really where we want to touch for these next conversations, is not what sounds good in a book, what actually works out well in a real family with a real schedule.
Yeah.
And real children.
It's easy to kind of have your home become a microcosm of the world outside, or an extension of that world, or your own personal little kingdom, or and so kind of this idea of thinking of your home as the little church, I think it puts us into mindset of we're building something here that's not really for ourselves. It's kind of for a greater purpose. It's also part of something greater. It's not its own entity. It's part of, it's a subset of the larger church. And then seeing ourselves in the role of parents as being, caretakers, as being, priests in a way, of, guardians of this little church that we've been entrusted with.
Yeah, and I think if you think in terms of like concentric circles, your home is the primary spiritual influence for your children's life and for your life, what you do every day. And your home is a small piece of your parish, where you go weekly to serve and to celebrate, which in itself is a small piece of whatever your denomination is, or the church as a whole, throughout history and throughout space. That we are these connected bodies, but each of these people, each of these individuals that makes up the body of Christ, is in a family, and it's the primary place that God has given to us to build and to grow ourselves spiritually, and to build and to grow our children. As we raise saints, which is, I think, the ultimate goal here. So, just taking a look, we've kind of covered a handful of these things. There's a great story. That's actually my story that I've already. That's a story that I've already told.
Oh yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
But the idea of that primary spiritual influencer, because we had that big study come out 6 years ago, about all these churches that are losing children. There's no retention rate, or very little retention rate, and so what do we do to keep our kids?
Yeah, I haven't seen a follow-up.
Not really. It's been a while.
But
studies take a while to do.
Yes.
If anybody knows of a follow-up study, you can drop it right there in the comments section.
Barna. Thank you.
Pew did it. Pew did the
Barna
research originally. Barna came through and said and they asked the people who had children who stayed in the church. And they said the key elements, that the key factors for children who retain their faith in which they were raised, whatever it is, a mentoring relationship with a non-parental adult, teaching cultural discernment, involvement of young people within the church, vocational discipleship, and a personal encounter with Jesus. And aside from that last one, these are all things that parents have a primary role in, and can actually take an active role in bringing our children to. And I think the Orthodox Church has a real power in that we have a lot of those things built into the structure. We have a lot of non-parental influential adults.
Yes,
was what I was trying to say. So your godparents, your priest, other men and women in your parish, who are not mom and dad, but are a significant relationship for your children. Oh, it says we're breaking up a bit.
Oh no.
Doesn't surprise me. This will be on YouTube later.
We will soldier on.
It's not live on YouTube, it's recording.
Yes, so we'll post it there.
So yeah, if anything breaks up, you can watch it there. So that's part of it there. Or a very big part of it. I think about the relationships our children have had with other men and women, even not parents, but just other men and women in our parish.
Yeah, and I would say that's something that we've been fairly diligent about cultivating with our kids, is making sure that they see other adults as authority figures, as people to respect, as people with knowledge that they can learn from, and also as, you know, as friends, as people that they can, you know, hang out with and have a conversation with and, you know, joke around with. And but it does take a lot of work to kind of weave those people into your family's fabric. I think sometimes it's easy to just go through your day without thinking about adding in extra relationships, because that does get hard sometimes. But it's worth it. You know, it enriches our lives, but then it also gives our children a good example of what other adult relationships look like, so they don't have to just look at us.
Because they hear our voices all the time. So it's that Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, we repeat ourselves a lot.
It falls away. Whereas, you know, a significant adult relationship in church, even grandparents and aunts and uncles, but I think specifically within your parish, whatever that is really important. There's that person who, outside of their parents, who cared for them and took an active interest in their life. And I think, again, something that we do well as a church is we do engage the culture with wisdom. We teach that discernment. What is the best course of action given X phenomenon, whatever the phenomenon is? And Father Christopher's on, so he mentioned this the other day, that, like, you know, there was nobody at church except for this kind of the skeleton crew. But that the offering was still made for the life of the world. That when we stand together in the church and the liturgy, that we stand there with the whole world. Yeah. And that we bring the whole world to prayer, in prayer. And so starting there with bringing the whole world to prayer, you know, with you in prayer to church, well, then you're equipped to leave the church building and to engage the world, because you've begun that engagement with prayer. Strong foundation leading to wise action, hopefully. Yeah. Going forward.
That's always the goal, right?
Yeah. And I think most Orthodox churches do well engaging the young people that they do have in their services. There's certainly any number of ways for young boys and girls, young men and women, to be involved in their parish life. But another thing that really, and I think the thing that really hammers home this, is that personal encounter with Jesus. Because as parents, that's not something we can give our children. That's only something we can set the stage for. All we can do is bring them to the table and invite them to eat. Bring them to the well and invite them to drink, but we can't do it for them. Yeah,
it's important to remember.
It is, and I think it's something that we often try and like take control of these sorts of things. And so, looking at moving forward, kind of looking at the next couple of nights as we go through these chapters, is really addressing that element, creating the space to meet Jesus, but also realizing that your children are also individuals. You know, if you begin at the first principle that children are born persons, they're created in the image and likeness of God, that they have free will, and they have they are also just like you. They are created in God's image, and they're endowed with those gifts and blessings. I think it frees you up it both frees you and burdens you as a parent, because you want them to have that real living encounter with Christ.
But it's also hard to watch some of the choices that they make in that journey, because you kind of cringe knowing he's also it's like, no, I've been there, don't do that.
I've already made that mistake. Don't make that mistake too.
But that's where having the guidance of other adults can be so valuable, is they might not see our example as being valid just because they're so close to us. That they can hear those things from other people and get a different perspective, a different voice. So
something I want to make as we kind of finish up here, because I'm looking at the time, and that is just that and anybody who's on this who knows us and sees us in church knows that we do not have model children 100% of the time in the liturgy or any of the services. And we want to make sure we're very real about that going forward. Like, the book has some fantastic information in it. It's got some great ideas. And I can say that as the author. I've heard people tell me that. But it can all sound very overwhelming and very ideal in a book. And it doesn't sound real when you're in the trenches, as it were.
Right.
And at one point, I actually say we have these little like sidebar notes from me and Elisa and from other people we interviewed, and I say it's like, to be honest, my children are usually the rowdy ones.
This is my circus, and they are my monkeys.
Yeah, this is my circus. And
Sometimes
they are
you
my
just have to
monkeys.
say, "I'm sorry."
So I think going forward, especially in times where things are a little confusing, a little overwhelming, the Orthodox life isn't a complicated life. It's a nicely frameworked life. And you can find freedom within that framework to raise your family, to raise yourself, to disciple yourself and disciple your children, disciple your spouse, as you work together towards salvation.
Yeah, I think the idea of the blueprints, it's like, this is just an outline.
Yep.
The church provides us with all the information that we need to build the little church. But when it comes down to it, we're the ones, that have to actually do that work to put it together. So, and it's messy, and we make mistakes, and we read it upside down sometimes and have to take it all down and do it over.
Yeah.
Or build on a foundation that maybe isn't as strong as we would have liked. But that doesn't mean that we give up, and it doesn't mean that we stop. It just means that we will, we're here to kind of talk through some of that stuff as we go, and open it up for discussion. There's some people who've joined us. If you have questions for us about the book or the church or anything like that, but just let us know. Send Caleb a direct message with any questions that you have, and we can answer them in our next installment, which will probably be tomorrow or Wednesday.
We'll have to see. Obviously, the pending plan. If the idea is to do it nightly around 9 o'clock.
Yes.
When kiddos are in bed and mom and dad just need some detox time.
That's cool.
And we don't want to go much longer than this half hour. So thanks for those of you who joined us. This again will be on my YouTube channel. I'll put the link on my page.
YouTube channel, which is
May I Have a Word.
May I Have a Word.
May I Have a Word. And it's probably one of a million called May I Have a Word, but it's got like teal headphones as the logo. With May I Have a Word between the headphones. But there's some other cool stuff up there too. My Old Testament Sunday school class is up there. So when we're done with this, each night that will also be up on my YouTube channel. May I Have a Word. I'll put the link on my website or on the Facebook
thing. Yeah.
So, well, thanks for joining us, guys, and look forward to talking with you tomorrow. We're going to look at the first chapter, which is
Why the Little Church.
So, carrying on some things we talked about tonight, but maybe in some more detail.
Yeah.
So.
Hey Todd.
People are logging on. Well, you can watch the replay. All right. See you later, everybody.